Hey there, athletes. Coach John Ferry here from Team Wilpers. Excited as always to welcome you to our athlete briefing. We're here for week number 4 of the Fall Run Challenge. But before we get too deep in, just want to say it was so nice seeing so many of you here in Chicago just over the past weekend. So a huge congrats for all the athletes that went out and raced both in Chicago and elsewhere over the last week. It was a blast hanging out for sure. Brings me to the point that New York City Marathon, only a couple weeks away at this point. So there are going to be a couple of Team Wilpers events, whether you're running, racing, cheering, etc. We would love to see you as part of those. And the first one is going to be Friday, November 1st at 9 a.m. right around Columbus Circle near Central Park. It's going to be our shakeout run. And then at Cheer Station on November 3rd, on around 110th Street and 5th Avenue on the Upper East Side, right across from Central Park. So if you have friends, family, etc., that are looking for a cheer spot, somewhere to go and kind of make their own for the day, certainly send them up to that Team Wilpers cheer station. You can look for a lot of the Team Wilpers gear, signs, etc. They'll be, once again, right on that corner, right across from Central Park. You can cheer on your runner as they start to embark on definitely the hardest hill of the race. So let's start off today with a quick review here of week 3. So for everyone here in the challenge, not racing last weekend, key run number 1 was that interval run. So this alternating marathon pace, half marathon pace. It's kind of a little moderate tempo workout, if you will, where we're getting to play with some tempo and really hopefully not taking too much strain along the course of the way. Key run number 2 was that fartlek run, which of course everyone is familiar with fartlek naturally, but it translates exactly to speed play, which is exactly what we're doing here. Is we're moving through 4 different pace ranges and just getting a little bit of a taste and a little bit of a touch of each one, and naturally finishing on that strongest 1-minute tough effort to round out last one, best one, to finish the intervals on that workout. So that was our key run number 2. And naturally our key run number 3, always our endurance run, working on endurance, working on that aerobic capability and quality to that workout there. So should be no troubles there. Now let's jump to our week 4 workout. So we're starting with endurance run with strides. So week 4, for many people who've been around for a long time, very typically our unload week, where we look to reduce volume, we look to reduce intensity. In longer training blocks, sometimes we do a very full unload. But this is only a 6-week challenge, and we're coming into the fall, or the holiday season after, which will be another 6-week challenge. So we're just going to do a slightly different reduction of volume than sometimes we would in a let's say a 16, a 18, a 20-week marathon process, etc. So we're in workout number 1, going to maintain some quality from these short strides. And these strides are something we do all the time. We do in warm-ups. They're a very effective tool, and we're going to carry them into the body of our workout here. But for run number 2, this kind of tempo interval run, if you will. So this workout has a structure, like kind of our midweek workouts usually do. It's got a little bit of pace, like our midweek workouts usually do, but it should feel extra manageable. So when we think about marathon pace, where these intervals are written, this is a pace, obviously, that you can maintain for hours and hours, the length of a marathon. So 1-minute intervals are awfully darn light at this pace, which is a great thing for us right now. So also let's think about when we run marathon pace intervals, we run half marathon pace intervals. We usually do things like 5-minute blocks, 10-minute blocks, sometimes even 20 and 30, 40-minute blocks. So a work to recovery ratio of 10 to 1, 20 to 1, 30 to 1, etc. Huge amounts of work to recovery. This upcoming week, we're looking at 1 to 1, work to recovery. 1 minute on, 1 minute off. Point being, this should be, once again, a very manageable workout. And so I'm including this workout in this week because I thought it was a good opportunity to show how even in a structured workout, you can utilize that in an unload week by reducing total strain here. So this might be a tool that I would utilize for an athlete that's in their peak of training, is fastly approaching their goal race, and instead of taking a full week of never touching pace, never touching any speed whatsoever, this might be a workout that we put onto their calendar in their own unload week so that they can continue to get rest, back off their paces, back off their volume a little bit, but not entirely lose feel of what that pace might feel like. So this is our tempo interval workout. It's going to be our key run number 2 And the goal will be just that. It's to try to maintain a little bit of feel for these paces going into the kind of quick conclusion of our 6-week challenge, that just a little 2 weeks that's left there, while being able to get a little bit of rest, being able to get fresh coming into that final charge. And once again, key run number 3, our long run, finishing the week nice and easy. So we'll jump into a couple questions that came up from the group here. And the first question, I was very specific. It's a little bit of a long question, so I paraphrased it, so hopefully it tracks here, which the question had to do with off-season volume and what especially half marathoners and marathoners really should be looking for as they complete their fall goals and move into the winter, which tends, for a lot of people, becomes an off-season, not everyone. This will pertain to anyone coming through their summer training block, fall events, moving into a time in which is a little bit less like focused training. So I'm going to specify it's starting with like half marathoners and marathoners, but this is very similar to all. So in general, a reduction of let's say a reduction of volume or intensity, but general training stress from peak it absolutely makes sense. On a training philosophy, it makes sense. You 100% cannot maintain training at the same intensity year round. If you think you can, you're doing it wrong. You're losing opportunity for huge progress by trying to maintain at the same level all year round. It's just never ever going to happen. So that reduction is ultimately a really good thing, actually. And as I mentioned, it doesn't necessarily always have to be a reduction in volume or in pace. So when I think about marathoners, half marathoners, etc., a lot of times coming into the off season, I'll have them absolutely reduce volume that's what they've been doing a lot of. And then I'll have them increase intensity. And our challenge structure usually follows that a little bit as well. When we come into the top of the year, if anyone remembers January last year, it's a lot of short distance, kind of hard intervals, kind of assuming that people have been moving from this endurance base of the summer and fall into now kind of a little bit shorter, harder training cycle in their off season. So it could be that reduction of volume and add intensity. On the flip side, let's just say even for a half marathon or a marathoner, etc., you've come through your fall season here, and let's just say you felt like you had an issue with your overall endurance, that you weren't necessarily pleased with the way endurance translated to your race distance. Coming into your off season, you might not reduce volume whatsoever. As a matter of fact, you might reduce intensity and go into a volume push, especially if you're someone who has spring half marathons, spring marathons, etc. It might make sense to reduce intensity in order to go through a base building and volume building period. But either way, you're flipping the energy zone, you're changing the dynamic of what you're working on and what you're training of, and most likely you're gonna ultimately reduce training stress with it, even if you're taking a higher intensity because you put in that reduction in volume there. So, what we also don't want to see 100%, because I mentioned the reduction of training stress is ultimately good, is fitness to just completely dissipate over the winter. We see that all the time as well, which is people have these very successful summer builds, very successful fall races, and then winter comes and fitness just disappears and we have to start all over in the spring. So we want to avoid that as well. So when I think about especially the marathoners and half marathoners of the world, but even some 10Kers and beyond, competitive 5Kers, etc., when I take an athlete into their off season, I ask them to maintain it usually at least a 90-minute long run throughout the year. I don't want it to drop a whole lot less than 90 minutes. 60 minutes is a workout by the time you get to the marathon. That's just something you do during the week normally. 75 minutes is a long workout. 90 minutes, I think, is sort of like where I'm like, all right, this is a proper long run, for especially a half marathon or marathoner, etc. So I don't like volume to drop much past that at all. I think it's a nice spot to hold. 90 minutes shouldn't be so super physically draining. It's a point where you might not even need additional hydration, nutrition, etc. You can just kind of do that workout, move on with your day. Similarly, I have found it both personally and for my athletes to be something that hopefully doesn't overwhelm their schedule in the way that these 16, 18, 20-mile runs do. They end up just taking an awful lot of time in addition to everything else. So I like that 90-minute long run year-round for athletes that are hoping even to return to the half marathon and marathon with within the next 6 to 12 months. For athletes that are just really interested in maintaining general fitness, maybe a little bit of performance, but not particularly interested in moving into any racing, I like to ask athletes to maintain at least a 60-minute long run week after week. I think, once again, that's kind of at the verge of, it can be a long workout, can be 60 minutes, but a nice 60-minute easy run to finish out the week, I think is great for athletes that have been training hard, have gotten comfortable with that long run volume, and are looking just to sustain great general fitness. That's a good spot to go with. We'll jump to our next question here, which is an interesting one, which is I'm running a half marathon tomorrow. It's a good luck one. And it starts with a steep, long hill. Should I try to run it? I'm not likely going to make it all the way to the top of the run. Or should I just, or the top of it at a run? Or should I save my energy, walk up as fast as I can? So this is kind of an interesting one, right? We have this obstacle at the very beginning of a race. So there are a lot of hills at the beginning of a lot of races, New York City Marathon being one. So if anyone's coming in, I would, for most people, certainly recommend you run that hill. But I would also recommend that you run the 25 and a 10th mile to follow that hill as part of the whole race. However, if you're starting a race and you don't think that you can maintain the first section of it because of a big incline, it might be worth reassessing here. And I think the way that it took me a second to reframe my thought process on this, but I started thinking about it a little bit in the terms of like ultra and ultra running, where this actually happens quite a lot. And what you will see is, these ultras start at the base of the mountain. You have to run the top of the mountain, and then you continue with the rest of the run. But you're sitting there staring at a very long day, and there's a actual physical obstacle of a huge incline right in front of you. And there are usually a few different ways that this plays out. You'll have your greatest trail runners shoot right up and over the hill and off and away. You never see them the rest of the day because they're done. They've eaten, showered, and by the time you reach the finish line, that's kind of inevitably that'll be there as well. You'll have the people, we'll call them the fly and dies, which attack the hill with great intensity right on, and then 5 or 6 miles later into this race, you'll just kind of peter on by them as they're cramped up and walking, and you move on with your day. And they'll be the biggest part of the pack when you look at these big obstacles right by a starting line, which is people run for a grand total about 30 seconds, then go into like a power hike, because there's no walking in ultra running, it's only power hiking, and go immediately into that power hike, manage the kind of obstacle in front of them, and then move on to the rest of the day. So what I would probably encourage any athlete to do in this scenario is not just look at the singular hill on a course, whether it's at the very beginning, whether it's the middle, whether it's the end, etc., but just look at the course as a whole and figure out where your energy is best spent and where it's best saved. So I was talking about New York City Marathon. It's a very similar scenario in New York City Marathon course, bringing it back to the road, where you've got bridges, the Queensboro Bridge, you have the climb on Fifth Avenue at the end, you have these like very large inclines as part of the race. And if you feel like these inclines are going to wipe you out and make it much more difficult to continue onward, you have to figure out a way to reduce pace. So unique scenario in this particular situation where that hurdle is immediately at the start line. But once again, I would look at the whole race, and if you feel like your energy is best utilized down the road or later into the race, then I would save it early, focus on executing your strategy for the remainder of the race from that point forward. So hopefully that helps. Otherwise, that's going to be all here for week 4. Hope everyone has an amazing weekend, great week, and hope to see you back here next week. Thanks again.